Howdy, folks. It's John Ernest, also known as Internet Janitor, here to welcome you to the playthrough video of all of the entries to Octo Jam 10. This is our 10th annual Chip8 themed game jam, where people submit programs made for a virtual game console from 1977. Joined with me, as usual, are John Terp.
Hey.
Everdread.
It's me, Everdread.
And Mastagofferin.
Hello there.
So should we start with something a little bit more exciting and finished, or should we kind of work from incomplete up to games?
I say start with a strong one. Make the first one strong, and then we can kind of level it off and kind of...
Okay, how about we start with Enter the Mine by TQuester. Yeah, so Enter the Mine is a platformer game. It is a very, very brutally unforgiving game in both the way that its jump physics work and collision detection work.
Oh, wow.
So it is possible to do, but it took me a remarkable amount of trial and error to get through just a couple of screens of this. That you pretty much have to be pixel perfect for how you place each of your jumps.
So are those amoebatrons that are, or are these spiders?
I'm not exactly sure. Those seem to be toilets.
Yeah, there's a lot
Like
of variety.
flapping their lids.
That's nice. I'm
This
getting
seems like
a bit of a Monty Mole sort of vibe from this.
This seems like a very rough jump.
Monty on the run.
You can
Maybe you could describe to our viewers, John, how this feels to control.
It's not particularly good. I wouldn't say it's awful.
Yeah, it has a completely fixed jump trajectory, both in, you will always move forward, and you move up and then down in this kind of triangular pattern. So from the point where you start, that is going to completely determine where you end up.
So you know the moment you press that button, exactly what's going to go down, and it's your fault. You should know.
Yeah,
so you really have to get that right next to you when you press it.
So as usual, this is an example of one of the games that is relying on Chip8 pixel perfect collision, which is both sort of good and bad. Some of the animated sprites end up making the bounding boxes for things very unforgiving. And I think I found that the logic for testing whether or not you fall through a platform was also a bit unforgiving. It's kind of shifted over a little bit from your left foot, but it is still possible to just barely nick a platform and slide through it.
Because I found because part of the platform that John's on at the moment with the little checkerboard, you could kind of walk up into it, and it was kind of nice. I was going to say, does it actually backtrack you when you fall down the hole? That's quite fascinating. I never did that.
Yeah, in some obstacles, it'll backtrack you to a previous screen, and in other cases, it just resets the current screen. So go ahead.
I was going to say, with the jump, you can go back on yourself, but you will continue to proceed in that direction. So in the air, you can kind of try and wiggle left and right quickly to try and abate further movement. But it was quite hard.
So from a technical perspective, this is an S-chip game, as you could probably tell from just how the resolution of pixels that we're looking at here. And this is executing at about 100 cycles per frame, which is a little bit fast for S-chip on the HP48. And all of TQuester's games submitted this year, we're going to see two more later, were developed using his own custom assembler, which unfortunately means that the Octo source code for everything is kind of the disassembly of that assembly, and so a little bit less informative than it might otherwise be. But what's kind of interesting about it is he also has his own ZX Spectrum-based interpreter for Chip8, and he's implemented features to detect whether or not he's in his own custom emulator, And when he is, the games will use some custom opcodes to do v-blanking, like double buffering for improved graphics performance. Basically, so that it's playably fast on a ZX Spectrum running an S-chip emulator. But it's implemented as like fallback logic. So if it doesn't find a signature in the header bytes of the interpreter space, then it will just work normally on an S-chip game. In that way, it's kind of a different style of hybrid Chip8 application that we've seen in the past.
So the key kills you, right?
It seems that way.
You're bonking your head on a key, so you got to be very careful of the key.
No, I'm pretty sure you can pick up the key.
Well, what's killing John when he's jumping into it?
I think he's just barely getting caught.
Oh, he's getting clipped. He's getting clipped by the toilet.
He's getting caught by the one toilet. I strongly assume that that's a toilet. It's possible that they're like insects or crustaceans or something, like a hermit crab, but they look like toilets to me.
Yeah, that was my takeaway. Is they were strange toilet monsters. I've loaded up the game myself because I'm watching John get eaten by a toilet over and over, and I was like, oh, I suppose he's done it. Well done, John.
Right.
Pac-Man's
Now
getting
getting
good.
eaten by Pac-Man over and over.
Yeah, that's where I got stuck for a long time. Because something I've with the with Superchip as a platform, if it was actually on the calculator, I don't think it would do very well with the fast moving
ghosting?
sprites. Yeah.
Yeah, rapidly moving objects are kind of an issue for the passive matrix.
Yeah.
There were certain models that had passive and certain that had active, right?
I think so. I remember there was always sort of like when we were trying to look at one, there was like, oh, you want to get one with a good screen, you want to get one with a good screen. And I was like, okay, but how do I get one with a good screen? I don't think I ever did.
Size-wise, this is one of the larger games that we had submitted this year. It's 3,423 bytes, so that leaves about 181 free. Actually, 180 if I'm remembering correctly. If you wanted this to run on the original S-chip interpreter. I did do a few experiments to see if this was playable at a lower tick rate, something a little bit more realistic, but it gets, I wouldn't exactly say easier, but it's definitely less responsive if you crank it down.
Yeah, I just remembered that I did beat it. I did get to the door at the end here, but there was an ending screen, and because I was holding down a button, it instantly went away, and I don't remember what it said. So try not to do that, John. Try to see the end screen. This is the last level, I think.
I mean, I will say that for a Chip8 platformer, we've got quite a bit of variation in the different kinds of obstacles.
Yeah, there's a lot of enemy routines going on here.
Yeah, every enemy has its own different movement pattern.
Are they bouncing around inside a bounding box? Is that what it is? Like a DVD logo?
That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, we said earlier, like, it doesn't feel great, but it can feel a heck of a lot worse. Like, it didn't feel too bad to me for a Chip8 platformer. Those can be really quite challenging.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you take into account the way that the buttons work on a HP48. Not exactly Game Boy controls. Well done.
Hey.
You qualify as a retro gamer, John.
Great. I'm honored.
Okay, let's move on. First, we can take a look at RPN Calculator, which is less a game and more a utility. So this is a reverse Polish notation calculator, sort of showcasing some numerics routines that TQuester was working on. Like before, we've got an S-chip application, which is apparent from the resolution that's running at. And you can punch in a number, press enter, and push it onto the stack. One of the things that's a little bit odd about this, relative to most RPN calculators that I have used, is that you actually have to push things onto the stack before you can apply operators to them. So you can't like have a second number sitting in the numeric entry area and then just hit plus and add it to what was already at the top of stack.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And but other than that, it seems pretty workable.
Sure is a calculator.
Yeah. This is clocked at 200 cycles per frame, but I did some experiments and it's pretty usable at 100. It's barely usable at about 30, which should be a more realistic speed. But a few things, particularly copying values to the stack, are quite sluggish in that kind of a scenario.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me if a significant amount of time is spent on number decoding, because as you can see, it is doing decimal calculations.
Right. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
No. Here's a calculator. You do 1 plus 1.
Mathematical.
1 plus 1 equals 2.
It worked.
It works.
And then the third submission, also by TQuester, was Halloween Blaster. Yeah, so this is yet another S-chip game. Similar constraints to what I've talked about previously, where this is designed to take advantage of a specific ZX Spectrum emulator, if it's available, in order to get somewhat better performance. The idea here is you pick up the candy, you kill the Halloween-related items, including ghosts, ghouls, coffins, witch hats, and so on.
Stop signs. Or is those lollipops?
Well, they could be slices of pizza,
Christian graves. I appreciate
bow
it.
ties,
Yeah.
the word boo, mirrors.
Is that a candy?
That was a candy cane.
I think the goal is to not shoot everything. By the way, John.
You have 0 sweeties, John.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you're a cross and you fire crosses at things. And one of the things that you can fire a cross at is a gravestone with a cross on it.
I think you can just let the sweeties fall. You don't have to actually pick them up yourself.
Yeah, I just figured that out.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, that's a little bit surprising. It's probably because it's using the same, reach a point on the board logic to determine whether things have touched you or been picked up.
It's always like it feels like this would be straightforward, but it kind of isn't. Because it seems like you can have an arbitrary number of bullets. I'm sure that there is a limit. Probably the limit is in excess of how many you could actually fire.
Yeah, there is a limit.
But certainly you can have quite a few projectiles by the standards of most Chip8 games.
I can
just touching it.
Yeah,
you can just touch them. Take them out.
Yeah, you don't even actually have to be underneath them for them to count against your health. Oh, what? Huh?
They don't count against your health if you're... Oh, another.
That's strange. I hadn't noticed that.
It seems like maybe 1 or 2 of the speech marks enemies may in fact have been candy. Or there might be just the height of the character might influence it in some way. I don't know. Like this one doesn't seem to make you lose a life if you face tank it.
Hmm.
The kind of it looks like another cross coming down, but not with a little, not the coffin, but like a gravestone cross.
I did a little bit of investigation into the source code of this, and while it does remember your high score from game to game, it didn't seem like it was using flag registers at all. So I don't think that that's actually preserved persistently. If it is, it's possible that I just wasn't able to read that part of it. But if not, that would probably be a nice, simple addition to this. How about we take a look at Kanji Calculator as a follow-up to the other calculator that we just saw. So this one is unfinished, and since I cannot read kanji, I found this extremely difficult to even really meaningfully comment on. Yeah, the basic idea of it is that it is a desk calculator that uses kanji numerics. And it uses ExoChip. It has, I think, a pretty nice little color scheme to it. And this submission was by Kratmang, who is probably best known for his former creation Octoma and several other fine games in previous jams.
Yes.
So I think this is conceptually neat, but I'm afraid that I am not in the audience for for making use of this as a tool. And it is, as the README describes, somewhat incomplete. So it has addition and subtraction with a few minor bugs to them, but multiplication and division, while they're on the keyboard, are not actually implemented. I think the little characters look pretty nice, though.
Yeah, these are nice visualizations for rendering any text. An Octo seems like such a challenge of getting a good usage of those available pixels.
And you can compare them to the Unicode characters in the README below, and I think that they all came out pretty legible as the same type of character.
5 pixel height font?
I think it's a little bit more than 5.
I think
it's like 7.
Yeah, 7 looks right.
Well, let's take a look at a few of the other unfinished ones. We can just get through those quickly. Start with Chip8 Racing. So this is kind of just a conceptual thing. One of those racing games that would use raster effects to give you a scrolling perspective effect. But this is basically just kind of a tech demo as implemented. It isn't really very interactive right now, and the whole thing is basically just the skeleton of what could become a racing game. There were a few things that I noticed in digging through the source code a little bit. The reason that it looks kind of like a flipbook is because not only does it clear the entire display on each frame and repaint everything, but it also is using the delay timer to update itself every 30 frames. So you're getting 2 FPS intentionally. I don't know exactly what the thought process was there. It could just be because in order to get the animation for the sides of the road at the rate that the author intended. But the general rule of thumb that I would say for making any kind of an action game on Chip8 is you really, really want to avoid redrawing the whole display every frame. Any part of the display that remains constant, you want to try to just keep on there and only update the parts that change.
Money in the bank.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's money in the bank if you don't have to update it. As I think to myself knowingly of what the future holds.
Yeah, so for example, in this game, even if you had a more complicated road that was being updated every frame, that horizon line is probably going to remain constant most of the time. Maybe eventually you have it shift up and down, but a lot of the time it'll remain constant. And so you can get a more complicated action game running at a reasonable frame rate if you use tricks like that. but just something to think about for the future. So that's Chip8 Racing by Dark Lynx.
Good racing, John.
Thanks.
Another unfinished one is Fencing.
Oh, that's a nice animation.
Yeah, so this is sort of a prototype of a fencing game. You can control your character, and there are all of these animations implemented, and even the AI routines for controlling the opponent, but it doesn't have any collision detection stuff implemented. I highly recommend that anybody who's interested in this have a look at the source code and work their way through the README, because it contains some valuable lessons for game development in general.
Oh, that's cool.
Very artistic and conceptual, John. But it basically comes down to the problem of getting most of the way through implementing a game before checking whether the basic concept of how the game was supposed to work was valid, and realizing that the design of the animations made collision detection extremely difficult, as well as actually hitting the opponent very difficult.
Well, what a novel and brand new issue that no one has ever faced before. Well, I guess welcome to the team.
I really like.
Yeah,
I like the look of this merged person.
Yeah.
And maybe that, in and of itself could turn into some strange new game concept, like sort of two people trapped in a single body.
I've always liked Octo's inversion for overriding pixels. So it has a very, I mean, obviously you're limited to what can be kind of accomplished with an on and off state for a pixel, but there's a lot of neat visual effects that kind of come from it.
Yeah, the fact that when you draw a sprite over anything that's existing on the screen, it XORs the pixels together.
Yeah.
I was just say this reminds me a lot of Nidhogg, and then they actually say it in the README here.
Indeed, yeah.
All right.
So that's Fencing, unfinished. Let's take a look at TermLib Demo. This is a submission by Pushfu. So this is less a game or a utility and more a showcase of a library that Pushfu developed for doing text rendering effects.
Nice.
So the whole idea of it is to give you something that's a little bit vaguely like what you get out of Venn curses or something like that, in a manner that is convenient to use from within Octo assembly language. It is specifically designed around the capabilities of ExoChip. There's a lot of documentation that is worth having a read if you're interested in trying to use this for your own creations in the future. I didn't see any figures in the documentation about how much space this library just by itself takes up, which I think would probably be an important consideration for users. But this tech demo that you're seeing here with everything together is about 2.8 kilobytes. So not too bad. And that does include the font data and all of the strings, and I think even a fair number of demo strings that aren't actually used in the demo. So it seems like it's reasonably compact. I'm just not exactly sure what the breakdown is on code space, data space, and overall consumption.
Yeah, like text handling is often relatively inconvenient, especially when you want to do anything fancy. And you always feel like you're working on it from like the ground up because you are. So yeah, this is actually really nice. I like this.
Okay, so let's move on to a few more games. Let's take a look at ManHang, which is Tom R's submission for this year.
Ooh,
it starts out with a really fancy introductory title screen, which is all based on a general purpose line drawing routine that Tom spent several weeks fretting over. And the idea of this is that it's sort of an inversion of the way that most Hangman games work against a computer. In this case, the human player is responsible for coming up with a word, and the computer will try to guess, and you have to be honest with your responses. The README offers a number of different ways that you can use this as sort of an open-ended gaming accessory to play in different ways.
Nice work, John. You won.
Yeah.
How about we try playing it in its original form, and just, John, go ahead and pick a word that you want the computer to try to guess, and we can keep track of how it does.
Okay, I've picked one.
So, well, you should tell us what the word
What's
is.
the word, John?
The word is word.
Word.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this time it's a lot less lucky. So U is wrong, N is wrong, U is wrong, E is wrong, Y, H. Oh,
There we
That
go.
poor hung man.
crippling defeat. One of the things that I told Tom would probably be a good idea, although it does add a lot of complexity to how this works, would be to make it so that it is certain to never guess the same letter twice. I have actually had that happen a couple of times when I tried playing through this myself. Yeah, so simple, unique, and for anybody who's interested in reading the source code, you might be able to scoop out that line drawing routine and reuse it for your own projects.
Yeah, that's very
I was-
cool.
Yeah, I was looking at the title screen thinking, I wonder
He
how he
guessed
actually did
E.
it.
He guessed E
Um,
3 times in a row.
Maybe it's a 3-E'd word.
And I should note that this is a stock Chip8 game that runs at 15 instructions per frame. So this is a completely realistic program that could work on a VIP. It's one of only 2 programs that we're going to see today that actually work entirely within those constraints. So good on Tom.
The hours of fun we could have had playing ManHang all those years ago.
Would you have been willing to type 1,360 bytes manually in with 0 typos in order to get this scintillating gameplay experience?
I mean, of course.
It goes
Who
without
wouldn't?
saying. Okay, let's take a look at Dodge, Catch, Shoot by Maratha. So this is in some ways very similar to Halloween Blaster, although it's a little bit juicier. You've got things that you can't destroy that are dangerous to you, which sort of look like rocks. You've got bombs, which can hurt you, but you can destroy them, and you're supposed to. And there's little bars that you are supposed to pick up.
Oh, it's a nice little animation.
Yeah, I really like the little ship explosion animation. There's a lot of small touches to this one that definitely elevate the presentation. And it's still, it reads clearly. You can tell what's going on. So from the general perspective of being an action game on Chip8, I think this is quite good.
I like the usage of a laser, having the immediate across the screen kind of hit detection there. And you don't get the delay of a projectile going across. And I imagine, especially for a game like this, sort of having that additional animation would add up pretty quickly. So it seems like lasers are a smart way of going for Chip8.
I was going to say, what's interesting to me is A, from the hit scan, but B, also, I like that it doesn't drop things so quickly that they can ever intersect. It seems like you never see a rock touching another rock.
Mm.
But I also really like the use of the hex in the score. Whenever I see a number count up to A, I'm like, oh yes, this is a good one.
Yeah, this is a stock Chip8 game in terms of the instruction set that it uses, but it is running considerably faster than a realistic Chip8 interpreter. Probably a big part of that is just updating all of the objects that are moving on the screen, because this isn't a super chip, so it's not possible to take advantage of built-in scrolling instructions or anything like that. If you look carefully, you can see that it appears to be erasing every moving object and then redrawing it. So it's possible, particularly because objects are moving down, it's possible that there's an opportunity to improve the efficiency of that by using pre-XORed graphics that sort of erase and redraw in one go.
E.
E.
The end.
All right. Refresh button.
I was going to say, I don't know if it's the stream, but all the objects seem to fall at a slightly different time. Is that the case? Like on different frames potentially. I'll have to look that up.
I think that it's probably just because the updates take a substantial amount of time. Probably more than a single frame, or they're just tearing a little bit. I did a few experiments at trying to clock the speed down and observe whether or not the game was still playable, but it doesn't scale down very well. I also observed that this game makes direct use of the delay timer as part of its animation sequences for like the laser and certain other effects. So it doesn't seem to rely on a single global timer. If you clock it down, then the entire game becomes very, very sluggish.
Oh, you can go up and down.
Will you jump?
You can move.
I actually had no idea you could do that.
You can move forwards. Oh my gosh!
What?
That changes pretty much everything.
Got a nice little booster animation there.
Oh, that's so good! Look at that.
You can dodge and weave.
Why would you?
Yeah, it seems like it's massively to your disadvantage to do that. I guess if you really need to get away from a sudden collision, there probably is a benefit, but you're almost always like, by the time they're at the bottom, they're passing you by. So it's
I think you'd need a more complex obstacles in order to really force the player to make use of that.
some incoming horizontal.
It's a little bit like the classic problem in shoot 'em ups of how do you give the player a reason to not be continuously firing their gun at all times.
Yeah.
But we came, we dodged, we catched, and we shot.
Sure did.
Let's do number knower. This was my submission.
How many numbers would you say you know, IJ?
I know a few numbers. Quite a few of them were used in the making of this game. So the idea of number knower is pretty simple. You're shown pairs of numbers, and you need to indicate which number is bigger, smaller, or whether the two numbers are equal. The numbers are drawn in an unusual font, which makes this a little bit more difficult than it might sound, but you also have to work under time pressure.
Pac-Man wants to eat the bigger number. That's all I need to remember. I'll be fine.
In my elementary school classes, it was always like an alligator eating a metronome.
Yeah, for me, like I knew what I wanted to do, but I always wanted to read the numbers the other way up. It's like, oh, how does 18 compare? And even though it still works properly, I got confused.
Oh, that's 24. Okay.
Yeah,
that's rough.
So the font that's used in number knower is designed so that every digit is as wide as its value, with the obvious exception of 0, which is 10 pixels wide.
Rough. That's rough.
So you can kind of like let your eyes glaze a little bit, and I found that helps playing a little bit, but not very much.
So it's all about the leftmost, but you can have different numbers or different lengths. So
yeah, as the game starts out just showing you 2-digit numbers, and then as you progress further, it'll start showing you 3-digit numbers, and it can eventually get up to 6 digits, which is pretty insane. My main goal for this was to make a game that was an action game that worked on stock Chip8 at Cosmac VIP speeds, and honoring the fact that the VIP will wait for a V blank after every sprite draw operation, which slows the achievable frame rate down quite a bit, while also trying to make it as juicy as possible. So there's a lot of little animations and other effects to try to make it a bit more exciting and varied than it would otherwise be for just the rudimentary gameplay here.
Oh,
I was on a run there.
Didn't know that number, 746, John. You gotta watch
19
out.
is not bad.
That's just good going. As well as I ever did.
This feels nicely compelling. It's a neat sort of you wouldn't think that just comparing two numbers against each other, but all the constraints and sort of manipulation you put on top of it really does add a lot of trying to. It gives you, it's a very simple core action that has this additional mental energy going into it, which is quite effective.
And it throws little surprises at you, like every once in a while you get two numbers that are actually equal.
Yeah, that seems like the end game of suddenly getting the equal numbers.
Yeah.
Do you ever do spacing between the digits, or is it uniform in that respect?
I did not. I had a few ideas for different variations on concepts that would do. Like I was thinking that'd be kind of interesting for it to sometimes show you just like a scattering of unary numbers. So it's just like, count the dots on both sides to shift you into a different way of thinking. But with all of the animation and everything else, I had about 12 bytes free at this point. There are definitely some things that were a little bit indulgent or wasteful, and I probably could have squeezed out another couple hundred bytes. But it was pretty tight. I was trying to use all of my space. And
that's a nice
remember that on the Cosmac VIP, you have even less RAM than 3.5K because some additional.
That's a close one. Those are tricky.
Some additional space is eaten up by the interpreter globals themselves.
Sometimes you just have to have the flashy title screen. There's nothing
you
can do.
The title screen for Number Knower probably eats about a third of the total memory for but it's a nice title screen.
It's great. The wonderful animations for the zoom in on it.
Do you think that any of you would while away hours playing this on a calculator or something?
100%, yeah.
Yeah, it has that very immediate, intuitive playability there.
That's the goal.
And you're learning numbers. You're knowing so many more numbers at the end of this.
Yeah, math, teach. I'm practicing my numbers. Get off my back.
666. Whoa. That's not very common.
Do you imagine if you started writing numbers like this as a bad habit? You just start writing really wide nines, Your teacher's looking at you and going, what's going on? Like, what? Do they need glasses? Is there a problem I need to understand? No, I just know all my numbers.
I think it gives them a nice personality. I feel like nines and zeros deserve to be, wide.
Part of the genesis of this was that I had an awesome. Oh man, let's let him focus for a little while.
Oh. Nope. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well done, though.
Very
that was
nice.
pretty impressive. Yeah. So the genesis of this was I was in an online discussion with someone remarking quite reasonably that they really dislike it when fonts use a different width for the digits in numbers, because it means that when they get displayed in like a game readout or something, they jitter around and it's unpleasant. So I made a font that is that to the nth degree with digits that are as different from one another as possible. And a surprising number of people commented in response to that actually this could make it really easy to compare numbers to one another because they're obviously different widths, which I don't agree with. And
if you had the zeros, I feel like if you had the preceding zeros up to it, that would help a lot.
There are a lot of things that I could do that would make it easier. Yes.
Oh yeah.
But I guess the point of this game is that no, having digits that work like this does not actually make it easier to compare numbers to one another.
I really want to see a count up, I guess, of what it looks like to see the numbers in order quickly kind of displaying.
I can link you to an animated GIF of that later.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, you start to get good at reading the number as it draws in those couple frames you get.
Yeah. A big part of like the technical implementation of this was I had to make it so that it drew the numbers as quickly as possible, because it's mechanically important that you give the player as little extra time as possible to handle that.
All right, I think I know my numbers now. I could know my
Okay.
numbers.
All right, then let's move on to Duel of the Fates.
Gosh,
Ooh,
who made this game?
I know, who could it be? No, you might recognize this title screen from 4 years ago.
This
'Cause
is
that's
this
when
is
I
from
click
the
it.
vault.
There we go.
Yeah. And if you played it earlier, I worked a little bit more on it the past couple of days. And I'm very pleased with where I managed to get it since then. I still can't believe I've actually made this game.
It's a very cinematic introduction.
The animations are so fluid.
Oh, that's sick.
Murdered.
Yeah, it's kind of a challenge because so much of the screen is already taken up with the cool part, the seeing people with their little laser swords waving them around, and that there isn't that much room left for the game UI that shows you what to do.
Yeah, so the main issue that I have is that I can look at the game UI and I can't actually watch what's happening. But there's should be 2 as well. Should
Oh,
be
yeah,
approved.
yeah.
There you go.
I was just treating it as a tap.
Yeah,
Even when you mash, like the transition between animations look really nice.
yeah. Your goal is to have your stance in the right place for when that red line hits it, and you get that little green block. There you go. Perfect. Like you get that little green pixel when it goes through because of the way of the XORing graphics, but it isn't very distinct, and it could just be an accident. But
The animations really give it an enormous amount of kind of production value.
yeah, I had wanted to. So when I originally submitted it this year, our friend with the dual-bladed lightsaber here, these were all the animations that he had for his attacks in the game. He would attack high, he would attack low, he'd attack middle. But there's quite a lot of time between the attacks. Like it's in memory, I was like, go high and do nothing, go low, do nothing. Because I was like, I'm sure I can fit in. Go high, go low, go high. And so one of the things I did in the intervening days was draw all of those animations. The issue is that I accidentally used the offset animations that I had done for the sprite sheet export, and that meant they were all misaligned and I had done it wrong. And I couldn't really directly use them, but I used those animations in the itch tooltip for the game instead. So at least I've made some use out of them.
Oh, gotcha. I did notice that you had almost 8 kilobytes of memory free, which is a little bit surprising given how many graphics there are in this. Did you ever think about maybe trying to put some sound effects in, or?
So I should. Yes, it's not something that I have much experience with, like working with the animations to like do something like this is something that I've been slowly getting better at, kind of figuring out how I want to implement over the past few years making games. But I have yet to really explore audio, and ever since we've had the pitch controls added to Exochip, I've really wanted to. But I just haven't got around to it, and I've never really kind of got my head around like trackers and that kind of thing. So I'm not sure how to progress from kind of very clumsily working with it to getting something like, say, music or actual sound effects. I really should, though. I think this game would be appropriate for it.
It would definitely be something to complement the screen shake and some of the other nice block animations that you have, to just give it a little bit of additional punch. And it also gives you potentially another way to provide the user with information for the timing that they should be following, whether or not they've succeeded or failed. Was there anything else that you really hoped that you were going to be able to get in that you didn't, or that you intend to keep tinkering with?
If we've been having this conversation yesterday, then yes. But as of today, I'm really pretty content over where I got it. And like this, I really wanted to get the kind of the developing challenge level, although I'm worried if John will be able to do it because I've not actually had anyone else play it. But I also added a secret hard mode, which like cuts out all of these delays, and it just goes absolutely ham on you.
Oh, jeez.
And
Sounds awesome.
yeah, I was like, yeah, this is the game I wanted to play. Like I really like this idea for a game. I feel like it looked good in Octo, in Chip8 in this form factor, to a certain degree anyway, as good as a game can look. Oh dear.
As this was developing, the part that really surprised me was when I realized that you were going for a rhythm game. But now that I've seen how it all fits together, it seems like a much better concept than just making it like a button mashing kind of Mortal Kombat, but you instantly slice the other guy in half experience.
Yeah, that was the issue that I kind of needed to confront, like with the fencing game that we saw earlier. Like, what are the rules? If you touch exactly the right place, do you win instantly? How do you reasonably model a fight, a challenging fight between two people who can't instantly win? You know?
And who are going to be moving super duper fast because that's
Yeah.
what lightsaber combat's supposed to look like. I guess you can kind of envision it as being that like the two Jedi are scoping each other out and they're having their mental battle and figuring out what moves they're going to do, and then they carry out the plan.
Probably to try to give like a notion of progression to it. The idea that they're moving left and right. The idea that if you're getting pushed backwards when you lose here, you go a few pixels to the left. The idea that that's like the full fail state.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Space to kind of indicate that. But it's
as
really
an alternative to a health bar or something like that.
Well, I think on top, so that's more of like a number of matches. The total goal is trying to get all the way to the right, and they're pushing you backwards to the left, sort of giving you a fail state that isn't immediately death. So that lets you do what you want in your particular rounds.
I think this is too hard.
Yeah, this looks quite challenging. How many? So what is the max number of incoming projectiles as far as?
So Maul at his maximum power, I think he has one pattern that is all 8.
Okay.
But sometimes they have a couple of gaps. So yeah, you should see hard mode.
Can you tell us a secret key for that?
So you'll have to refresh it, so you'll lose all of your progress, but it does feel like maybe you're not going to quite get it. So if you push Z or the A button, there's room, and now more hard mode. Now push 1, and it skips the introduction, and he starts off in his most challenging mode.
Just immediately starts going apeshit on you.
Yeah. But
wow.
Yeah, I have beaten it in hard mode, but it is developer difficulty, evidently.
Brutal.
So it was quite interesting to design the game around the idea of being able to then use its self-modifying code to go in and change the rules by which it operates. Like, how can I make it speed up these particular aspects when I'm using constants everywhere? I need to tweak this value, I need to tweak that value, you know?
And doing it in a way that doesn't make your critical path longer with a bunch of conditionals and things peppered around it.
Yeah. Although I must admit, I did not pay particularly much mind to performance and memory usage, or even trying to be particularly elegant with how I was programming it. We talked earlier about the idea of, well, maybe don't blank every frame and redraw everything from scratch. But in this case, I am redrawing everything from scratch. Oh, hey, you're at the second wave. And he's already He's already going at you. But I really wanted to capture some more of that frenetic feeling that I wanted to experience while playing it. So I mostly made the hard mode for myself to play. But you can certainly get the hang of it. I have, over the past few days, sort of picked up. And I'm not sure what I should do, because obviously I would want people to succeed and get to experience the ending. There was originally it was just this final stage that was available, but with the difficulty of the opening stage, so it was quite easy to win once you figured out how to play the game, which is effectively the challenge here, unfortunately. And at the end of that, I did make a you win animation where you defeat him, and I didn't really have an actual ending after that point. So it just started running up the animation frame until it got to a number where it just spat out a whole bunch of weird numbers onto the screen, and I was like, oh, that'll do. That's my ending. It's just some random pieces of memory that it's found. Let's have that.
Oh, that sounds cool.
The perfect ending.
Yeah, the moment I
Allegedly
stopped like
killed
trying to follow the projectile and like just looking at the light on his side of the screen, nothing else, got a little easier.
But it felt really good to go back and work on a game idea that I had and had kind of failed to capitalize on previously. To kind of go back and sort of settle that nagging thought I had in the back of my head. And I have that same thought for another one of my games, which is Angle of Death, which I have actually worked on a few times since, but I'm still caught up on some of the things I need to do to make it kind of function as a game.
Yeah, you've published a few kind of work print versions of it, but not as part of an Octo Jam.
Yeah. But this was kind of the like I thought to myself, what do I wish that I had managed to do, and this was the one that was at the forefront of my mind for game ideas that I really wish I had been able to finish up, because it just seemed so compelling to me at the time, and I think seeing it in action now, especially with the skills I've picked up in the intervening years, I'm very much quite pleased with the outcome. I'm just really hoping that John's able to beat it so we can see all my funny jokes at the end. I should have made an easier version.
This is one of the ultimate lessons of participating in game jams, is that if you have something good at the end, it's crucially important that the judges be able to get to it.
Yeah.
And that's counterbalanced by the fact that inevitably, when you participate in a game jam, your tendency will be to make a game that is hard enough to challenge yourself.
Yeah.
Except the problem is that you've been playing it for the entire span of the jam.
Final stage. You can do it.
This is where you need the Duel of the Fates to start swelling up.
Yeah. I was a little bit worried about, because there's an argument to be made of like, why am I making silly fan games, right? Like, why not just make something more generic? But especially when it comes to like music and that kind of thing, things get a little bit even more hazy. But I don't know, you know.
An idea that we've kicked around in the past was making it so that you could like pick a YouTube video to play as the background music for a given Octo title. So that if you don't want to program and work within the really tight constraints, you could still get a little bit of an atmosphere added.
It'd be great if you had like some sort of overlay that it strips the video, but it shows like a cassette player, and then it just kind of flips the tape skips a certain portion, so it's like you're doing it in real life.
You give it like a command that can kind of track to a specific. Yeah, I think that's kind of like on a technical level, it's kind of straining the limits of credulity, but it would be an interesting model. Maybe design it kind of like an 8-track player or something like that, where you've got a couple of different continuous loops, and then the game logic can pick one.
I was just thinking about trying to kind of model if a kid was playing it, but they had a friend nearby with a tape cassette, and they're kind of adding the flavor to it. Yeah, I just changing out cassettes. So there's going to be always a delay of jamming that cassette in, but there's going to be.
Your friend has a kazoo in his mouth and a tambourine in his lap, and he's just live jamming to it, or maybe
get the live orchestra in.
Exactly. Or maybe the John Carpenter style, just sit there with a Casio keyboard and kind of noodle atmospherically. Depending on the style of game, it could work.
Makes me wonder if there's been any video games where you just have a musician that's part of the crew, and they're actively diegetically composing and making music as you're playing. I don't know if I've seen that, but that's a fun little notion of. No doubt incredibly hard to actually try to implement, but the idea that the music is being organically created in response to you is always nice.
A while ago, I had like the beginning rudiments of a prototype of a game that was kind of like an RTS with a bunch of people rioting, and you were able to like influence the way that the crowds of people would move around and what they would do by like playing boombox tracks.
That's really cool. I guess Brutal Legend was kind of going in that direction with controlling of like music, but very lightly. But the idea of a crowd like swarming mechanics and notions being modified.
And you can kind of make people more aggressive, or make them run faster, or make them hold their ground. Oh damn!
A new saga begins.
Ooh, scrolling text.
Oh man,
that's intense.
Well done, John.
Yeah. It's very tough because it's horizontally kind of like you can't really tell which one's coming down the track unless you look really closely or you get used to it. I wonder if it would be easier to read if it were vertical.
Or like a dotted line separating the between the tracks, just so you know, like, oh, it's in the top line instinctually from the right side. Like that might kind of keep your eye along with it.
Yeah, I thought about maybe trying to make a larger indicator near, like on the screen, that you might be able to see more easily. So to just like block high or block low.
Now, there's a lot of text here, a lot of good little jokes.
You got to be careful that J.J. Abrams doesn't just rip this all off for episode 10.
Yeah, I smashed all this text out earlier today to be like, I need something to end it with.
I think that Palpatine likes his friends to call him Palpy.
Yeah.
Good old Palpy.
Oh, you love it when a game gives you a new mode when you beat it.
Hard mode is it's slightly interesting because you can just press the buttons as they appear on the opponent's side of the screen.
Well, we've got one more program to talk about today, and that is Chipception OS, which is less a game, more of a tech demo. But it's kind of doing the needful on a concept that people have been throwing around for quite a while. So it's based on the observation that ExoChip gives you significantly more RAM and even more execution speed than classic Chip8, and S-Chip and ExoChip give you higher resolution. So Tremendous has now demonstrated that it's possible to make an ExoChip program that lets you multitask running multiple stock Chip8 games. It's a complete cooperatively multitasking Chip8 interpreter written in ExoChip.
Wow.
So you can have multiple windows, and they can be repositioned, and you can open multiple windows at the same time. You can have multiple Chip8 programs running at the same time and switch between them like tabs.
Are they all running concurrently, or is there do they pause on window?
They're all running concurrently.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I took a look at the GitHub for it, and it is juicy with information.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend checking out the README for this. You can see how the Pong game is running in the background while we're playing Space Invaders here.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
And we've got a pretty fun blending of new and old stock Chip8 ROMs here. The Space Invaders that everybody likes to use as a demo for their emulators, the basic Pong game that's been around forever, the oh man, that game gets a lot harder really quick.
Yeah.
The test suite that a lot of people use for validating their own new interpreters, and even Cave Explorer.
A classic.
So this only uses about half of the total storage that's available to ExoChip, even with all of these different Chip8 ROMs. Not actually that hard, because a Chip8 ROM is only 3.5 kilobytes at the most. But in keeping with some of the previous submissions that Tremendous has made, this is a rather CPU hungry. It's actually clocked at 200,000 cycles per frame, which is about 2 orders of magnitude faster than ludicrous speed, as permitted in Octo's web interpreter. So from could you run a program like this, structured in this way, on a Cosmac VIP? The answer is, if you don't mind getting up and making yourself a sandwich and having a nice shower, and maybe going for a short drive in between frames, maybe.
Oh man, Cave Explorer was a great game.
It really was. And it still is. But
It's timeless.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things that I definitely have learned that I could do better now, just because I have a more sophisticated understanding of Chip8, or that would be a lot easier to do because Octo has improved significantly since this was written. Like making all the text strings for this game was a real big pain. And now we have string modes, for example.
yes, back in going back to the original version of Duel of the Fates, the only content that game had was a lot of text at the beginning and some animations. Like I was stuck coming up with the game idea before, like I couldn't figure out.
You have to use E to pick up the bricks, John.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
But you screwed yourself.
I see. Oh, you can't. Okay.
I think Q resets.
And trying to go back and salvage all of the text, the introduction out of it, it was a nightmare. It was all in an encoded font. It was all. I needed to run some extra software that I haven't run in 4 years, I guess, since I made it last. And I just ran the game, read all the text that was in it, and just typed it in with string mode into the Octo. And it was so much easier to just do that than what I had been doing before. It's been really very, very helpful.
The tools have really come a long way. So I did a little bit of looking back at previous years. So this is our 10th year of doing the Octo Jam, and in that time, if I total up every game that has been submitted and that is still preserved in some way, we have 135 programs and games made for Chip8.
Wow.
How does that compare to what programs were made back in the day when it was a current thing?
Well, the original manual that came with the Cosmac chip VIP included 20 ROMs, if I recall correctly. And then it had a pretty interesting page in the manual that was another 20 ideas for people to use to make their own games, some of which are hilariously cryptic. And I think that before Octo existed, the entire quantity of Chip8 ROMs, including ROMs for Chip8 variants that are largely incompatible with modern software, was about 150 programs in total. So if we take into account the fact that a few of the earliest games for the first couple of Octo Jams that were hosted on our own website before we moved to Itch were unfortunately lost in the process of getting everything archived. We probably now represent something like 50% of the entire corpus of games for this platform.
Feels pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, I could sit
A
here
new
and play
life.
Cave Explorer all day, but do we have one more to play? Or are we taking it home?
No, that's
Did we play Octagon Trail?
Oh, so this actually may have slipped past because this was a late update. Last year, this was just like a screenshot placeholder for an unfinished game. And
Yes, I remember.
when we reached the submission deadlines, this was still the same placeholder. But obviously, a lot of us were pretty excited about the concept of being able to play Oregon Trail on Chip8. I actually have no idea how complete this is.
World's
Just barely missed
slowest
it.
bullets.
Yeah, I was fishing through the submissions and saw this game again. I was like, "Oh, this rings a bell. This rings a bell." But I saw that they'd submitted it as the original ROM, but that they were going to, like myself, poke at it over the next couple of days. And I'm glad that they have. Like, it's looking pretty good, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, this
Our
is,
chip.
and like
I love
obviously
that
with a game
salsa.
jam, like obviously with a game jam when you've got like a deadline or something, like but the whole point of Octo Jam is, like we were saying, to make more Chip8 things exist, and it's just better that things exist and are good. So this is neat.
You have to push past the hardship and heal, and that's the fate of all game dev. River.
Definitely seems a little hard coded, I guess.
It's a little bit. It's a little bit cryptic, which is always it's always a challenge to get things to explain themselves within the number of pixels that we're dealing with here, as has been evidenced by many of the games that we played today, including mine.
So do you have multiple wagon people that you're seeing deaths right now too, or is that
It's certainly possible.
Okay, it looks like
You can...
Yeah, so you're up to 4 deaths out of 6 right now. Oh, game over.
Oh, so close.
You almost got to Octagon.
Did you know that the original version of Oregon Trail was text-based and played on a teletype? And the way that the hunting minigame worked was that the teletype would tell you to type a word really fast, like bang, and you'd be scored on how quickly you could enter it in return.
That's great.
And if you made any typos, then obviously you miss. I wonder if you could make an interesting adaptation of Oregon Trail where you're playing as like a flock of buzzards following after these these idiot colonists. It's like, wow, there's 3,000 pounds of meat here. Pig out. They just left it there.
It'd be fun to play as the trail, as the adversary, the cosmic adversary of the pioneers.
Like you have a certain supply of rattlesnakes and cholera blankets that you can sort of distribute along.
You get to decide the depth of the river and the bends of it, and you can kind of wrap the river around them repeatedly.
One of the things that I found pretty interesting in the version of Oregon Trail that I played the most was that if you die on the trail and your wagon is just abandoned there, then it becomes available. You can encounter it the next time you play.
Great.
And certain things will be gone, but like clothing and spare parts and bullets stay good, but like food has perished. So if you plan it out right, you can do like 3 runs that are each progressively trying to fail faster. And then on your 4th run, you're just overflowing with free supplies from the doomed colonies that came before you.
That's great. And that's such a nice modifier of difficulty going into future runs as well. It's a cool concept. I remember the version that I played a bunch of different versions of Oregon Trail for the years, but I remember one that I liked a lot where it had like incredible graphics. It had like real live people, but my graphics card had them all rendered upside down and with 4 eyes. So it was like this alien sort of Oregon Trail. It was really cool.
And that's how we got the Everdread that we all know and love today.
That was normalized. It was absolutely normalized. The idea that, and they're all like, I think they had voices. I think they was like, I don't think they had motion, but there was definitely like, it was like photo pictures, and they're like, oh, look at you coming down the trail. And it's just that their eyes are so messed up. Everything upside down. I remember Sim Farm also had that issue where everything was, all my pigs were upside down.
I mostly played the Apple II version at school and the slightly nicer version that had kind of like watercolor painting scanned in for a lot of locations, and it had MIDI music.
Yeah, that's a class.
I think this is just the wind condition. Because people did not die, and I reached the end. I'm going to call that a victory.
It's a game over still.
I would say that, including some version of the Whitewater Rapids section at the end would really complete the experience and also make it a little bit more obvious that you were getting to the end.
I think it's really hard to not have the chalk the wagon and float it. You kind of need a little bit more
the river. You always ford the river.
No, I chalked it. I just want it to flip. I just don't want to see him die. Chalk that wagon. I don't actually know what that means. I don't caulk the wagon.
Caulk the wagon. What you're doing is you're like hammering rope or something into the seams in order to make it so that it doesn't leak as much water. I mean, there was also a lot of fun to naming your characters, and then it's this person died. It would obviously be pretty painful to do text entry in Chip8, but even if you just had like a canned list of names that it would say, might add a little bit of drama. One of my previous games, An Evening to Die For, has this kind of like hard right turn at the very end. Once you've confronted the murderer in this mystery gameplay, it becomes a fencing duel. And that was strongly influenced by Oregon Trail. I always thought it was great that this kind of cerebral simulation game that's very sedate and non-action oriented always ends in an exciting mini game that's action based that you don't have any opportunity to train for, during which you can like lose all of your people and destroy all your goods in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
It's realistic.
The cherry on top.
All right, I've Oregoned all my trails out, so
we're Oregon. That's everything. Kind of a small turnout this time. We've been having slowly dwindling participation in a lot of these over the last few years. Looking like the Octo Jam 7 was kind of our high point, but 10 years is a pretty good run.
Yeah, I'd say I think like getting like the amount of entries we've had that are all different and have such cool ideas for the past 10 years is wild, especially for something as limiting as Chip8 is.
It's so neat to see these incredibly concise, incredibly specific, and obviously very limited, but very pure game concepts being realized within this space. When you have such intense limitations, it really there's very little that you could do that'd be getting more limited than this. But there's so much opportunity to see pure game design kind of shine through.
You're forced to distill an idea into the simplest way that it could possibly work.
But there's still room for razzmatazz and spectacle, as both you and Masty have shown. Those the animations in both of your submissions were quite impressive, and it's neat when you have these sort of limitations, when you have this sort of stuff to be told, oh yeah, this can run on the original hardware, and to be impressed by that. Everything is sort of a context of what is available and what is possible within those constraints, and it's always impressive to see how everybody who submits games kind of pushes against what you could even expect.
Thanks to everybody who participated, and thanks to everybody who's been along with us on all or part of this 10-year journey of developing software for Chip8. And thanks, as always, to my fellow commentators. Thanks to John for recording all of these streams and playing all the games. Thanks to Masty for helping me with the technical color commentary. And thanks to Everdread for giving us an unvarnished game design perspective.
Just being along for the ride.
So thanks, everyone. That's a wrap.
See ya. Everyone say goodbye.
Take it easy.
Goodbye.
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 See ya.
E.
The end.
All right.